When the birthing better skills were beginning to develop in the early 1970s in the United States, most of us went into the hospitals, whether they were rural hospitals or urban hospitals. And maternity care was not very sophisticated back then. For example, a cesarean was only done to save a woman's life, which meant that 95% of us labored and had a vaginal birth, whether we had a good outcome or a tragedy. Babies dying in birth was considered to be actually normal and accepted, and not terribly infrequent. A mother dying in birth was infrequent and really not accepted anywhere around the world. So the medical profession was focused on that and not on the baby. In the early 1970s, women didn't have any choice. We went into our hospital and we had whatever medical assessments, monitoring, and procedures were done. And they were done to pretty much all of us. At that same time, it was the height of the Lamaze and Bradley skills-based childbirth concept, which is the second global childbirth concept. The first one we all know, and we can repeat it. There's no way to know what your birth's going to be like. And that's followed by the sentence, therefore there's really nothing you can do to prepare for it. And Lamaze and Bradley, two obstetricians, and Grantley Dick Reed, who wrote a book called Childbirth Without Fear, were saying, yes, there is something you can do about it. Grantley Dick Reed was saying, don't be afraid of birth. And therefore, if you lack fear, you won't have pain. And I've discussed this in a different video, and that's not accurate. On an individual basis, of course it might be. But on a large basis, how you feel and what you feel are not necessarily related. The third childbirth concept, which we're going to talk about in this video, is the choice-based concept, which came into the United States in the 80s. So when birthing better skills were developing, it was in one childbirth concept, skills and no choices. And it continued to develop in the next childbirth trend, which was choices and no skills. And it was at that point where we tried vocally to be saying to people, skills and choices should go together. And here we are in 2024 saying the same thing. So this video is about us having hospital births and why birthing better skills developed, given that there was a skills-based approach to childbirth. And that had to do with the fact that one was we didn't have choices, so we all had those assessments, monitoring, and procedures. And we also were still doing the birth. Most of us were doing the birth with Lamaze skills because that was taught probably in every hospital in the United States. And for a generation, from the early 60s to the mid-70s, multiple millions of families learned Lamaze skills. It was just like the societal thing to do. Go to the first ever childbirth preparation classes in the world. And we gladly went because we as women had demanded that our husbands come into birth with us. And we expected them to know how to help us because prior to them coming and helping us, we had been left alone to discover birth ourselves. And what so many hundreds of millions of women throughout time and place on this planet understand is there's no way to know what your birth is going to be like. You might have a very easy birth and your baby might be dead. Or you might have a postpartum bleed or tear badly. Or you might have struggled for days and days and days. And anything in between, normal, natural, physiological, was considered to be normal, natural, and physiological. Birth happened. 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth. We're going to give birth. There's no way to know what your birth's going to be like. So we try to overlay it with things. In traditional communities, as I talked about in other videos, each culture overlaid that first childbirth concept, you never know what your birth's going to be like, with all sorts of do's and don'ts in order to protect the mother. Because that's the first global childbirth goal that has to work with the childbirth concepts. Does the concept, you never know what your birth's going to be like, how does that work with the goal to keep a mother alive? Well, traditional cultures did it with do's and don'ts when you're pregnant. The medical profession does it with assessments, monitoring, procedures. The natural birth movement has never really done it with very much, except perhaps quit smoking, quit drinking, get exercise, change your diet, think positively. And in the 70s, it was wishing we had choices when we went into our hospital birth. But what we knew when Birthing Better Skills were developing in the early 1970s was that there was this huge success in the skills-based childbirth concept. Number two, skills did matter. They were something that we could do, even though there was no way to know what our birth was going to be like. And when we learned skills, what we experienced was that we reduced the second global childbirth goal, which is suffering. Sadly, that incredible success in the United States in hospital births from the 60s to the mid-70s was totally ignored. Obstetricians and maternity nurses saw multiple millions of Lamaze and Bradley families coping better with the natural physiological occurring labor pains because 95% of us labored. We coped better as women, and our husbands helped us. This had a profound impact on the medical community. It began to lighten up and loosen up and permitted all sorts of changes that in the 1980s got coupled with choices. However, the goal of Lamaze and Bradley and Grantley Dick Reed was for low-risk women who learned their skills could achieve a natural birth, pain-free labor without medical care. This was not achieved by a sufficient number of women who were choosing to learn those skills and wanting to have a less medical birth in the hospital. We were all taking Lamaze classes. Most of us were going into the hospital, having those assessments, monitoring, and procedures. And our husbands were coming in to coach us. So we really coped better. We managed, we dealt with, we handled, we stayed more on top of, and we felt more in control. So my generation of families still feel really good about their births. And it had a huge positive impact on our parenting because society was changing in the 70s. And that change accelerated in the early 80s, societally and independently of how people viewed childbirth. So in the early 1970s, when Birthing Better Skills were developed, we were going into the hospital. We didn't look to change that. We looked to make the skills that we had more adaptable, more adjustable, and more sustainable. Lamaze and Bradley were not very sophisticated set of skills, and there's no blame for that. When something new starts, we always expect it to be sort of, basic, because it hasn't really been tried by a lot of people. But once something gets tried, we refine it more. And by 1970, when I gave birth, it was apparent that the Lamaze and Bradley and Grantley Dick Reed skills weren't targeting the global reality. 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. High-risk women can have very easy births. Low-risk women can have very challenging, tragic births. But each woman has to do the activity by herself. And so Lamaze, Bradley, and Grantley Dick Reed had a gap. And that gap was, it didn't target 100% of the pregnant women because all of us were going to give birth. So many of us, even though we took the classes that were explained to us as natural birth classes for low-risk women to achieve those three goals, we took the classes anyway. We were desperate to have something to reduce our suffering. 95% of us were having a vaginal birth, and if there was a tragedy, it was accepted. And yes, there were all these fiddly things done to and around us, but many of us were 1 or 2 generations away from people that didn't have any medical care. And modern people like medical care, like they like electricity and refrigeration and indoor plumbing. So we developed a broader range of skills within the skill area that was being taught in classes, which was breathing and relaxation. So Birthing Better Breathing is not like Lamaze. It's not like Bradley. It's building from the ground up, which is to acknowledge that women are going to breathe in and out at every moment of birth, just as we do in life, and that when you labor, your breathing can change from one split second to the next, and that your breathing, how it sounds and what you look like, is often related to what you internally feel or what is happening to you or around you, and that the people around us can see and hear that. They can see us looking calm 1 second and freaked the next. And yet, breathing didn't necessarily indicate how we felt. So many women who were very quiet still hated birth, and many women who screamed would say it was fine afterwards. So we focused on the basics of breathing. And the first question we asked is, what is the 4 ways that we all breathe as humans? And I'm not going to tell you what that is in this video. You can watch the video about breathing. There are 2 of them, directed breathing and the sustainable, adjustable, adaptable breathing. But once we understood the 4 ways and we understood the variations, and we understood that some of the variations helped us cope and other of the variations indicated we were having difficulty managing, then our partner could have the skills to even breathe, and we would follow if our breathing was indicating we were beginning to feel less in control. So we took better breathing, birthing better breathing, into our hospital births. And we worked better as a team because we shared the same set of skills, but we could apply them from our different roles or jobs or tasks at hand. We also worked with relaxation. It was apparent that the idea to relax from Lamaze and Bradley was external. Just relax your external muscles. But women who were very relaxed still had very long births. And because I come from a bodywork background that deals with fascia or connective tissue, the relaxation skills Birthing Better Families developed in the 1970s were influenced by understanding that it was fascia tension inside our pelvis that we needed to learn to relax. But we learned that the word relax wasn't a great word. If I say to you now, just relax in your pelvis, you'll just roll your eyes, really, because our body tissue doesn't respond to that word. And for me, who has done body work in many countries around the world, every country has a word for relax and for soften. And our tissue responds to the word soften. So I want you to soften inside your hips. And like all of us, we feel the spreading. And it's because connective tissue, fascia, is all one piece. So we can have very simple tension inside our body that can have a huge negative impact on how easily our baby can open us up and come down through and out our body. So Birthing Better Families in the early 70s developed a greater range of breathing skills. We could direct our breathing and open up parts of our body because we learned that relaxation was softening and that had to occur inside our body. But we also developed the communication skills. We had somebody with us who was helping us. And many times our communication was non-existent or wasn't effective or was downright confusing and negative. Birthing Better Families developed skills because we wanted to do better. We wanted to birth better. We wanted to communicate with our partner better. We wanted them to understand us better. We wanted them to communicate with us better, and we wanted to understand them better. So we developed communication skills, verbal and nonverbal, and that's in another video as well. So what happened? We birthed better in hospital births, no matter what was happening to us around us. All of us, low risk, high risk, good births, bad births. The only time we could not use our skills was if we had an emergency cesarean and we were given a general anesthetic. That changed in the 1980s, so the skills could be used absolutely in all births. So when I talk to you about birthing better hospital births, I want you to understand that the purpose was not a goal. It wasn't to have a natural birth or a pain-free labor or to like it or to have one without medical care. Our goal was aligned with the global childbirth goal number 2, which was we didn't want to suffer. And when we had a broad and deep variable range of skills that we could use, we just birthed better. And when our partner shared those skills from their job and task and role as a birth coach, they coached better and we worked together better. And this had a profound positive impact on families. By the 1980s, fathers were told no longer to coach. So since the 80s, you guys have not had a skilled birth coach. Often the man is replaced with a doula, support, and maybe you've learned some skills from her. And if you have a doula going into hospital birth and they're teaching you skills, teach your partner those skills, and the 3 of you work together. You can take turns. And so hospital births, they're going to always exist. The assessments, monitoring procedures change over time, but what doesn't change is that 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. And we must now grow a self-learning skilled birthing population for all births, without exception, worldwide. There are quite a number of skills-based methods now. Birthing Better is one of them. And the ICPA, International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, their website, Pathways Family Magazine, has a childbirth skills-based hub where you can purchase whatever skills-based method you would like to learn. Use your skills in your hospital birth, whether you like your hospital or not, like your doctor or not, like their policies or not, came in from a birth center or a home birth or a home alone birth or not. If you are in the hospital birthing, use skills. That gives you the power to be in control of yourself, no matter what you feel or what is happening to you or around you or what you think. You are doing the activity of birthing your baby. Use skills. It's common sense. Tell other people.